Inside an old factory, a group of workers tired of being abused decides to protest and demand better rights. Led by Songaji, they try to speak with the owner of the company, but a group of armed guards blocks their way. The tension rises and everything turns into a fight when one of the workers throws a stone. In the middle of the chaos, the boss appears with a megaphone and asks for 2 employees to come inside and negotiate with him. However, Songaji is not chosen and everyone else is ordered to go back home. That night, Songaji returns home with his wife and his young son. Sank, the boy, does not understand why his father is always getting into trouble. But Songaji explains that it is important to stand up against injustice. Before going to sleep, Sank's mother asks him to close the windows because a storm is coming. Even though the boy is terrified of lightning, he obeys. 3 days pass and the workers who went inside to negotiate never return. Worried, Songaji gathers his co-workers once again to find out what happened. But when they return to the factory, they are confronted by the guards again, and another fight breaks out. During the confrontation, one of Songaji's own companions betrays him and stabs him in the back. Sank, who had secretly followed his father, witnesses everything and runs toward him, but it is already too late. Just then, the rain begins to pour, and filled with rage, the boy tries to fight the guards himself. However, he accidentally unleashes a massive burst of electricity from his hands, striking everyone around him. After that, a year passes. Sank and his mother struggle to survive until she manages to find a job in another city. She promises she will return soon, but the days go by and she never comes back. Now Sank has to survive on his own, facing hunger and his fear of storms. Over time, believing that his mother abandoned him, he decides to live on the streets. One morning, a group of street kids corners him in an alley and starts beating him up. Luckily, a young man named Awon appears to help him and easily defeats them all using martial arts. After saving him, Awon takes Sank to his hideout inside a train station and decides to teach him how to fight so he can defend himself on his own. During the training, Sank proves that he learns very quickly, but every time it starts raining, he panics and runs to hide. When Awon asks him why, the boy says it feels as if the lightning is chasing him. Sometime later, Awon suggests that they escape together to another city and start a better life. That same night, they run after a moving train. Awon manages to climb aboard and tries to help Sank, but the boy cannot reach him. Before leaving, Awon gives him one final piece of advice: survive on your own and trust no one. The next day, Sank tries to find work at a harbor. There, another boy shoves him aside to steal his spot in line, but this time Sank fights back with a kick. The problem is that the boy calls the rest of his gang, and they begin chasing him. While running away, a couple inside a car offers to help him and promises to take care of him. But remembering Awon's words, Sank becomes suspicious and eventually escapes from the car to continue surviving alone on the streets. Several years pass and Sank is now an adult working as a security and electronics technician for a newspaper. The city is filled with crime and violence, but he prefers to stay out of trouble and live quietly without getting involved in anyone else's problems. Meanwhile, a politician named Durga is trying to change things and fight against the city's corruption. During a dinner with other lawmakers, he meets Pankor, the powerful head of organized crime who practically controls everything. According to rumors, Pankor had a past very similar to Sank's. When he was a child, people close to him ordered the murder of his father and burned down his house to steal the family inheritance. He survived, but his face was left severely burned. After that, his uncle sent him to an orphanage where the children were constantly abused. However, Pankor managed to unite the orphans and organized a rebellion against the people running the orphanage. Over time, those same children grew up and became his allies in the criminal underworld. During the dinner, Pankor tries to get closer to Durga, but the politician rejects him because he knows exactly who he really is. That act of disrespect ends up becoming a huge mistake. Later, when Durga returns home with his family, he notices someone watching him from the hallway. As he approaches, a mysterious man uses some kind of fire magic to knock him unconscious. When Durga wakes up, he discovers that he is tied up inside an abandoned building alongside his wife and children. Soon after, Pankor appears and tells him that he is going to make an example out of him for everyone else to see. Desperate, Durga begs him to let his family go, but Pankor sets fire to the rope holding them, causing them all to fall from the building. Trying to save them, Durga jumps after them, but he ends up falling alongside his family. Meanwhile, Sank wakes up one morning after hearing noises coming from the apartment next door. It sounds like someone is trying to force their way inside, but he decides to ignore it and continue with his routine. Later, at the newspaper where he works, a man comes running and asking for help because a gang is trying to catch him. Sank and his friend prefer not to get involved, but a security guard named Awang decides to help the man and take him to the police. Before leaving, Awang tells Sank that the city will never change if good people keep doing nothing. Those words begin to make him think. The following morning, the criminals return to the neighboring apartment, and this time they manage to break in. A young woman named Woolen and her younger brother Teddy live there. The criminals start threatening them, but Sank finally decides to step in. Using everything he learned on the streets and during his training, he begins fighting the men with punches and kicks. The criminals pull out knives, but Sank manages to defend himself and take several of them down. In the middle of the fight, one of them tries to attack him from behind, but Woolen surprises the thug by grabbing him and throwing him onto a table. Taking advantage of the distraction, Sank defeats the rest and orders them to leave. Woolen and Teddy are impressed by his skills, but Sank quickly walks away to avoid more trouble. That same night, while working security at the newspaper building, the criminals return looking for revenge. This time, they come with many more men. Although Sank manages to defend himself at first, he is eventually overwhelmed by the number of attackers and is forced to escape through the building's massive printing presses. The chase continues onto the rooftops, where another brutal fight breaks out filled with punches and kicks. Even with all his skill, Sank is eventually knocked down, and the gang begins beating him mercilessly with wooden sticks. Finally, when he can no longer defend himself, the criminals throw him off the roof of the building. Any normal person would have died from that fall, but at that exact moment, a powerful storm begins. Several lightning bolts strike near Sank, and the electricity starts flowing into his body. Suddenly, he wakes up and absorbs all the energy around him, although the massive surge causes him to lose consciousness once again. The next morning, Sank wakes up in his apartment as if nothing had happened. Shortly afterward, Woolen visits him and asks him to watch over her little brother Teddy for a while. Meanwhile, at the city assembly, several politicians discuss Durga's death and suspect that Pankor is behind everything. The crime boss himself appears and claims to be innocent, though he also takes the opportunity to warn them to be careful about what they say about him. After leaving, one of his men comments that the politicians could become a problem, but Pankor already has another plan in motion. In secret, his followers begin injecting a mysterious serum into shipments of rice. Later, Sank takes Teddy to the market to meet up with Woolen, who is gathering local merchants together to demand more security in the city. But before they can continue talking, the same gang that threw Sank off the rooftop suddenly appears. When the criminals see him alive, they are completely shocked and immediately begin chasing him through the streets. Although Sank tries to escape, he eventually gets surrounded and is forced to fight once again. Thanks to his skills, he manages to take on several enemies at the same time, blocking attacks and countering quickly. However, the criminals decide to finish him off and start throwing wooden sticks at him. That is when something unexpected happens. Sank blocks the weapons using lightning coming out of his arms and even manages to fire small electric blasts that knock several men to the ground. Sank himself is stunned by what he just did, and when he tries to repeat it, his powers suddenly stop working. Even so, he grabs one of the criminals' sticks and manages to defeat the rest of the gang. The entire fight is witnessed by Woolen and the merchants from the market, who begin believing that Sank could be some kind of hero. But he ignores them and walks away. Hours later, while at work, he tells Awang what happened and admits that for a moment, He thought he might actually have special powers. Shortly afterward, Woolen arrives asking for his help because everyone believes he can protect the people at the market. However, Sank refuses because he still does not understand what is happening to him, although everyone notices that his injuries seem to have healed unusually fast. That same night, when he returns home, he finds the market burned down and several merchants injured. Seeing the people's desperation, Woolen tells him that he cannot keep ignoring injustice and begs him to help stop Gazul, one of Penkor's men. Finally, Sank decides to take action, even though he still does not know how to control his powers. Later, during another storm, he remembers how he absorbed lightning on the night he survived the fall from the building. He then walks out into the rain and allows a lightning bolt to strike him directly. The impact throws him to the ground, and when Awang tries to help him, he is pushed back by the electricity as well. At that moment, Sank realizes that lightning is the source of his power. Woolen even discovers that while he is charged with energy, he barely feels any pain. Soon after, Sank accompanies Woolen and several merchants to a wedding where they supposedly plan to find Gazul. But the moment the criminal sees them arriving, he tries to escape while his men prepare to fight them. Just then, the bride suddenly appears, confused and wanting to know what is happening in the middle of the celebration. However, before anyone can explain anything, several female guests suddenly begin feeling sick. All of them are pregnant. Not long after, the news reports that the same thing is happening in different parts of the city. That is when they discover the cause, the rice contaminated by Penkor's men. According to experts, the strange serum affects babies' brains before they are born, making them unable to distinguish between good and evil in the future. Penkor's goal is to create a new generation of violent followers who are easy to manipulate. The news throws the entire city into chaos. The streets become filled with riots, looting, and vandalism while criminals take advantage of the disorder to attack businesses and rob homes. That same night, Sank appears wearing a mask to hide his identity and decides to confront the rioters. Thanks to his abilities, he manages to defeat several of them without too much trouble. But during the fight, one of the criminals wounds him with a special knife designed to collect a sample of his blood before escaping. After the battle, Sank returns to the newspaper building where Woolen treats his injuries. In the middle of another storm, he charges himself with lightning once again. But after realizing how dangerous his electricity can be to the people around him, he understands that he needs to protect his friends better. With the help of Woolen, Awang, and Teddy, he creates a special suit using materials from the newspaper building. He even adds metal antennas to his mask so he can absorb lightning more easily. The actions of the mysterious masked man soon become major news and attract the attention of the House of Peace, a secret organization made up of politicians and journalists trying to stop corruption. One of its members, Ridwan, suggests investigating the strange serum and also discovering the identity of the masked hero. Meanwhile, after another night of patrolling the city, Sank wakes up and finds Woolen making breakfast for him. Little by little, the young woman begins to grow attached to him. But the peace does not last long. A group of rioters appears near the building and Sank quickly rushes out to confront them. However, they claim they were not the ones who burned down the market and reveal that the real culprit was a famous violinist named Adi, whom they saw near the area that night. After hearing this, Sank decides to investigate and heads to the theater where the musician is performing. After the show, the masked hero intercepts the violinist and demands answers, but the man suddenly pulls a hidden blade out of his violin and attacks him. An intense fight immediately breaks out. Thanks to his powers and endurance, Sank quickly gains the upper hand, and during the battle he notices a strange symbol tattooed on his enemy's chest. Realizing he cannot defeat Sank, the violinist tries to escape by running onto the highway, but he is struck by a vehicle before he can get away. The following day, Penkor discovers that the violinist has died. It turns out that he was part of the League, a group made up of the most loyal orphans in Penkor's organization. Furious, Penkor gathers the remaining members of the League, including the dancer, the nurse, the chef, and the sculptor, and orders them to eliminate every member of the House of Peace. One of the most dangerous among them is the dancer, an assassin who wears a mask on the back of his head. He ambushes Ridwan inside his car and easily defeats his bodyguards. Just when Ridwan seems doomed, Sank arrives wearing his new suit and confronts the villain directly. The dancer is shocked by the hero's strength and speed and even manages to remove his mask during the fight. Even so, Sank eventually throws him aside, and the assassin decides to flee after realizing that his opponent is far stronger than expected. After saving Ridwan, Sank examines the dancer's mask and discovers the same symbol he saw tattooed on the violinist's chest, confirming that both of them belong to Pankor's league. Ridwan thanks the hero for saving him, and Sank's actions motivate him to approve the mass production of a supposed antidote for the contaminated serum. The proposal passes, and the vaccines quickly begin spreading throughout the city. The problem is that the company responsible for producing them secretly belongs to Pankor, and instead of an antidote, they plan to use a substance that will make the serum's effects even stronger. Fortunately, Ridwan had ordered the vaccines to be analyzed in a private laboratory and discovers the plan before it is too late. He then tries to contact the masked hero and finally manages to find Sank at the newspaper where he works. There, he warns him about Pankor's scheme, but it is already too late to act in secret, because Pankor also discovers Sank's identity and arrives at the newspaper building accompanied by every member of the League. A massive battle immediately begins. Using his suit, Sank first fights against the model and the chef, managing to keep them under control even without fully charging his powers. However, more enemies soon join the battle: the sculptor, armed with hammers and pliers, the painter with his devastating punches, the blacksmith wielding swords, and the student, who fights using her backpack as a weapon. Although Sank struggles to hold his ground, the overwhelming number of enemies begins wearing him down. To make matters worse, the dancer and the nurse also enter the fight while Pankor takes Woolen, Teddy, and a Wong hostage on the rooftop of the building. Desperate, Sank tries to save them, but the chef fatally wounds a Wong right in front of him. Before dying, a Wong reminds Sank that true strength was always inside him and that he must fully unleash it. The words of his old friend finally awaken something within Sank. He then absorbs the electricity from the massive storm directly into his body and becomes more powerful than ever before. With his powers completely unleashed, he starts defeating the members of the League one by one. However, the hypnotist manages to trap him inside an illusion where he sees his parents alive again in their old house. For a brief moment, Sank falls for the deception, but he quickly realizes that everything is fake and breaks free just in time to block another attack. He then unleashes a massive lightning strike that destroys his enemy's weapons and defeats both the blacksmith and the hypnotist once and for all. Seeing that almost all of his allies have fallen, Pankor attempts to attack Sank from behind, but Ridwan appears and shoots him before he can strike. Before dying, Pankor orders the painter to escape and continue the serum plan. Sank wastes no time and races away on his motorcycle to stop the truck transporting the fake vaccines. When he finally catches up to it, the driver shoots at him and causes him to crash off the bike. But at that exact moment, a mysterious heroine appears and uses her scarf to stop the vehicle and make it overturn. Thanks to her help, Sank destroys all the contaminated vaccines using a gigantic lightning blast. Although he manages to save the city, they soon discover that some women had already received the injection, meaning Pankor's plans were not completely stopped. Meanwhile, inside an abandoned museum, Gazul reveals that he has his own secret plans. Beside him lies the body of Ki Willowwook, a legendary ancient warrior. Using the blood they collected from Sank during one of the battles, Gazul successfully brings him back to life. After awakening, the warrior asks why he has been revived, and Gazul answers that his old enemy has returned, Gundala, the Thunder Warrior. That is when the truth is finally revealed. Sank is actually the new Gundala, the heir to an ancient power capable of controlling lightning itself. Ki Willowwook orders an army to be assembled, making it clear that a new battle is about to begin. Days later, Sank is seen watching over the city from the rooftops while wearing an upgraded suit. He now fully accepts his role as a hero and promises to protect the city from crime, unaware that even more dangerous enemies will soon appear. Meanwhile, the mysterious heroine who helped him watches from a distance. Her name is Sri Asa, and she knows that one day she will have to fight alongside Gundala against an even greater threat.